r/AskReddit. What was the most successful prank you've ever pulled? One summer when my cousin was staying with us, he and I had a small prank war going on against one another. We decided to put our talents together and try to prank everyone else. We put small piles of flour on each blade of the ceiling fan in the living room. Just enough to not be seen from the ground. A few weeks went by and nothing happened, and we had forgotten about it. And then, the day finally came. My mom had company over. I was in the kitchen, and I heard all kinds of shouting/screaming coming from the living room. My cousin ran up to me grinning and said it's happening. The living room looked like it had just snowed inside. Everything was coated in a dusting of flour. My mother was screaming, her guests were staring in confusion, and the dogs were running around in circles. It was so amazing, until we had to clean it all up. Carefully not to do that near an open flame. Airborne flour is extremely flammable. Explosive is probably more accurate. It's literally a fuel air bomb. My late husband was a weather nerd and loved inclement weather. One time I was home alone and a huge storm was imminent. I taped the weather warnings. A few days later it was a beautiful sunny day, not a cloud in the sky. We were watching TV, and as soon as he walked into the kitchen to fetch a beer, I started playing the warnings. It was so funny. He kept running outside to check the sky. I laughed so hard, and so did he, when I fessed up. For our high school senior prank at my boarding school, we snuck out in the middle of the night and stole the athletic director's prized golf cart. We pushed it up a hill to the school. One of our friends was able to get keys from a custodian and let us in a back door. We got the golf cart into the building and then into a science classroom and lifted it up onto the big lab tables. We decorated it with nonsense and left it there and locked everything up. In the morning, everyone not in on it was completely confused about how the hell we had pulled it off. We didn't even damage anything. Even the chain we had to cut to get the golf cart free was replaced with a note on our athletic director's doorstep. The custodial staff wasn't even mad at having to take the cart out because it was so ridiculous. I can only imagine the double take that the teacher did when he entered his class that day. My senior class did something like this to our principal. His truck was loaded onto the stage, where everyone was giving the end of the year speeches. He had no idea how we did it. When I was 13 I told my mom my alarm stopped working and asked her to wake me up in the morning. So I stayed up until she went to bed and snuck downstairs. I took a jar of Vaseline and put the Vaseline on my doorknob and went to sleep. The next morning my mom woke me up by screaming, "What the duck? Who does something like that?" 1998 I was in 4th grade and got my hands on a universal remote watch. At the time it was super high tech and nobody had heard of such a thing. I would sneakily turn the classroom TV on every 5 minutes. The teacher, who I despised, was convinced that ghosts were in the room. She unplugged it after the 3rd or 4th time. We told our tech illiterate teacher to hold the power cord higher so the energy would flow better. She complied. At my school, whenever the internet is slow, usually because everyone uses it at the same time, the IT guy tells the younger kids that he needs to refill the Wi-Fi tank. After seeing the movie Poltergeist, I thought it would be funny to put all the chairs up on the table stacked all weird and then open all the cabinets in the middle of the night. I thought it would be harmless and my parents would get a laugh out of it. Nope. They believed 1000% that it was a ghost we had in the house, and it didn't even matter that I told them the truth. They choose to believe it was a ghost. I'm not sure why, but I think they really wanted to be haunted or something. Child of divorce, my dad and I weren't getting along at this point in my life. I walked by his house on the way to my friend's house and saw his car was there. I realized he was in the basement when I just walked through his front door. So I went into his kitchen and flipped over all of his chairs on their side and bolted out the door. Just to duck with him. I didn't tell him for 4 years. We are all good now, and we are getting a beer a couple weeks ago, and I said do you remember all your chairs flipping over randomly a few years ago? The look on his face was priceless because it was like he'd forgotten about it, then it all came back to him at once. A successful but unsuccessful one. I saw a friend walking ahead of me, so did the old tap on the shoulder but run past on the other side maneuver. However, while concentrating on him, I didn't see the park bench, ran into it at full speed, and collapsed behind it. Through the gaps in the seat I could see my friend looking left and right, almost freaking out, wondering who had tapped him in the shoulder. The tears from the pain in my leg kept me from laughing and giving myself away for about 20 seconds. Task failed successfully. I set up a fake email address for the Narwhal Appreciation Society and sent a co-worker an email from the address saying we at the Narwhal Appreciation Society have been informed that you too have an affinity for this majestic creature and we wanted to see if you would like to join our society. He responded with thanks for the email, not sure who referred me, but I don't have any interest at joining your society. Good luck. A couple of weeks later, I emailed him again and listed off the membership dues for the society and upcoming events. He responded with once again, please note that I'm not interested. Please take me off your distribution list. A few weeks later, I emailed him a note that his membership dues were in arrears, commenting that the faithful narwhal would most assuredly pay its bills if it used currency. I emailed him roughly 2-3x per year for 3 to 4 years. For the first year, when we still worked together, I'd see him open the email, shake his head, and say aloud, not these ducking guys again. But he never attempted to block the email address. He responded to some, becoming increasingly agitated, and ignored others. In one response, he attached pictures of dead narwhals that had been killed by Inuit hunters, and said, this is what I think of your stupid narwhal. I hate them. I wish them all dead. I eventually stopped and never mentioned to him that it was me, but years later, a few ex-coworkers were out for pints, and one guy said to me, whatever happened with that narwhal shit you were doing? And my pranked coworker's eyes bugged out of his head, that was you? Cooking at school, different parts of the menu were prepared by different people. The girl tasked with the fruit salad was halving grapes when I passed her, so I commented that she wasn't peeling them. Were we supposed to do that? Of course, didn't you listen? Ask the teacher. A long time later, I had already forgotten the matter, not expecting to be taken seriously. I heard our teacher yell, Anita, what are you doing? Poor girl was almost done peeling a pound of grapes. A buddy of mine from high school went by the nickname TD. One day, my brother asked me what TD stands for. So I look at him, like he's an idiot, and say Tyrone Draconis, duh. This name came out of nowhere. I had no intentions before that moment of deceiving him. So I nonchalantly go back to whatever I was doing. Brother freaks out saying that's the best name ever, and is so excited he can't wait to surprise TD with knowing his name at school tomorrow. Thing is, TD stands for Theodore David. I get to school about 30 minutes before my brother and start explaining to everyone the situation and to go along with it. Even TD is on board. So, from end of August until early mid-May, every time my brother sees TD in the halls he shouts Tyrone Draconis. At one point another classmate of mine tried to correct him, but she had a bad reputation with me, bullied me when we first moved there, so naturally he didn't believe her. Then came graduation day, when my mom spoiled it. Yes, my parents were in on it too. Brother didn't want to attend commencement, and as a bargaining tool she said, don't you want to hear TD's name announced? Several times. After a couple hours of that, brother comes up to me and asks, TD's name isn't really Tyrone Draconis, is it? I proceed to blow his mind with this elaborate ruse that spawned from one spontaneous moment several months prior. This is more serious now than it was a prank before. When me and my 3 other brothers were young, we hid from our dad when he came home from work. We never responded to him calling our names, nor made a peep. We thought we were the perfect little ninjas. Well, he decided to go to the neighbor's house to see if we were over there, but when he finds out we weren't, he calls my mother in distress saying we were all gone and nowhere to be found. My mom comes home crying, and they are getting ready to call the police when we pop out from our hiding spots. They were not happy lol, we all got the belt that day. You should have came out while he was at the neighbor's house, and when he came back just acted like you were there all along. So I went to a Catholic high school. I had a work-study volunteer job in the office to help with tuition. Part of this job involved printing letters and stuffing envelopes to parents and alumni. Fast forward to spring break time senior year. I get my hands on some of the stationery and envelopes and type up a letter to parents informing them that after careful consideration, the school has decided to place the health of its students above the arcane regulations against the use of condoms. Thus the school was going to be providing protection at the junior and senior proms. I typed this up at home and hit a kinkus, but only had enough for about half the senior class to get a letter. So I just mail merged every other student, stuffed the letters, and dropped them in the outgoing mail basket my next shift. Skip forward 3 days and shit hits the fan. Lots of kids are talking about this. The school is inundated with half super pissed conservative Catholic parents and half backpatters saying it's about time. The school sends out a letter to all parents telling them to disregard the previous communication, and that the letter was not an official communication. Skip forward another 3 days and even more parents start calling and writing asking what the school is talking about. They never got a letter. So, in a final letter, the school gets a copy of the original letter and includes it in a mailing to the entire student body with a second letter explaining that this wasn't official and that they will not be providing condoms at the dance. Y'all are the first people I've ever told. Wait. They never suspected the senior student that worked in the office with regular access to their letterhead? I'm not Catholic, but from everything that movies and my friends ever taught me about life at a Catholic school, I would have expected someone to end up being crucified on the front lawn next to the flagpole for pulling such an epic stunt. That would be a promotion. I bought $100 worth of Pepsi cans and hid them around my roommate's room. He moved out in August and he's still finding them. My friends and I rearranged my college roommate's room and covered absolutely everything in tinfoil. He was just getting back from a trip and rolled in with his suitcase. He is overly dramatic and thus a great victim. We were watching TV when he goes to his room and I hear, "Oh my god." He huffs out and says the most dad comment ever, "Why would you do this? If this isn't cleaned up by the time I get back from work." He goes to work. We tinfoiled his suitcase. In the army the duties rotated. When it was my turn to clean the toilets I had prepared some chocolate pudding. I scrubbed the toilet seats exceptionally clean, then left a thin, but clearly visible brown line of the pudding on one of the seats. During inspection the lieutenant saw it and yelled for the person responsible for the bathroom that day. I raised my hand and followed him into the stall with the dirty seat. "What's this?" he said. I dipped my finger in the pudding, smelled it, then slowly licked my finger as if I was tasting it and said, "It's poo but I don't know whose." This is where I usually stop when I tell this story. The lieutenant was a hilarious guy. After a few intense seconds he cracked up and started laughing, then simply told me to clean it in case his commanding officer would drop by. I had heard about this prank somewhere before, but I can't remember from where, but at least I did it myself. How much time was there between the cleaning and inspection? This could have been a very dangerous game. We are talking a few minutes, and nobody was able to sneak in and use the toilets. They were all busy with their duties. I wanted to prank the lieutenant, not taste poop. I wasn't taking any chances. The seats were cleaner than the mirror on the Hubble telescope. Told my sister that orange soda tastes better the more you shake it before opening. You remember the Juicy Fruit gum sticks? The ones with the wrapper? I would carefully open the gum and save the wrapper. Then I would carve a piece of soap to look like the gum Rewrap it and give it to my sister. The kicker was that, after she first put the gum in her mouth and discovered it was soap, I'd laugh and then offer her a real stick of gum as an apology. That second stick was also soap. She fell for it. I work at a wastewater treatment plant. We employ cameras to monitor things in the field that we need eyes on at all times. One of these cameras is pointed at the bed of a tractor trailer that is used to haul biosolids to the landfill. The video feed is a constant stream of dewatered sludge falling into the trailer. When one section is full, an operator has to go move the trailer so the solids don't spill out all over the place and make a mess. One year for April Fools, I used the old CTRL plus ALT plus UP arrow to turn the camera feed upside down like 10 minutes before my shift was over. The person taking over for me was much older and much less tech savvy. When he noticed the sludge falling up instead of down, he lost his mind. The next day I got scolded by my boss because my coworker had a panic attack and then contacted the after hours emergency tech support line to fix the cameras. Fun police strike again. This was in about 5th grade. I was sitting by the door and saw that a kid sitting by the window was copying all my movements. I made sure he actually was by making some weird movements, and sure enough he was. Then I noticed that behind his head, close to his shoulder, was an open window. I got the idea and swung my head as hard and violently as I could to the side. Of course he did the same also with a lot of speed and slammed his head into the window super hard. He whimpered and went home early because he had a headache. I felt pretty bad, but now every time I remember it puts a grin on my face. Sorry, Tom. In college, I lived in a dorm. We got along, but didn't know each other too well as it was only a couple weeks into the year. However, this was my second year in the dorm, and knew a few of them. One of these people, who we will call Fred, not his real name, really loved apple juice. Like, most of his mini fridge was nothing but single serving bottles of apple juice. The only thing that wasn't apple juice was his roommate's occasional soda or food. One day, he was out at a late club meeting, and I went over to talk to his roommate about something I don't remember. While we were talking, his roommate opened the fridge to get a soda or something, but all I remember is seeing apple juice and thinking, hey, I should put his apple juice in my fridge. So I did. Everyone else on our dorm floor found out I put it in my fridge, and they wanted some too, so next thing we knew, everyone had 1 or 2 bottles of apple juice. But this wasn't enough fun for us. Within an hour, everyone had come up with some sort of quest he would have to complete in order to get his apple juice back. Eventually, someone, who will remain nameless, but is by far my favorite human I've ever met, suggested we theme the thing around the Legend of Zelda, because Fred loved the Zelda series, which we did. We planned out the majority of the main quest line from the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, then all went to our rooms and waited. Fred came back from his meeting totally exhausted, and his roommate said, wow, you look tired. I bet some apple juice will help you feel better. I have never heard someone scream so loud for apple juice. His roommate then handed him 1 bottle, saying it's dangerous to go alone. Take this while playing the intro theme song to the game, and sent him on his way to the first quest in my room. He had to collect 3 spiritual stones, a beginning of the game for those not familiar, and he seemed done with the whole thing. It was obvious he thought I had all of his apple juice, which made this all the more fun to watch. When he finally finished, he demanded his apple juice, and he was so confused, as when I opened my fridge for him to only see 2 little bottles sitting in it. I then handed him the Master Nerf gun, and was met with a blank stare. After what felt like an eternity, it clicked in his head that this was just the beginning. He took it and thrust it above his head towards the sky, immediately going into character. The rest of the night was him running around our floor completing quests to get his apple juice back, but he was no longer in it for the apple juice, he was doing it for fun. He got more into it as time went, as did everyone else involved. The person playing the part of the final boss even wrote an entire monologue complete with a strobe light. Well, it was his roommate flicking the light switch rapidly, but it still worked. By the end of the night, Fred had completely forgotten he was doing it for the apple juice. What started out as a small prank turned into an all-night event that turned everyone into close friends. I still talk to these people 9 years later. To give even a happier ending, 2 of the people that were involved in giving quests recently got married and all of the main participants of that night were there. That's the best prank I've ever pulled, and I would do it again in a heartbeat.